Good evening. My name is Ajit Sachdeva, and I'm the Director of the Division of Education at the American College of Surgeons. I'd like to welcome you all to this fireside chat of the American College of Surgeons Academy of Master Surgeon Educators. We have a very special session planned for you this evening, and are delighted to have with us for this fireside chat Dr. L.D. Britt. I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving as co-chair of the Academy with Dr. Britt, and we have worked together in a very close partnership to move the agenda of the Academy forward. Dr. Britt is truly an icon in American and international surgery. I would just say a few words about Dr. Britt before I turn it over to Dr. Shabahang to formally introduce him. I've known Dr. Britt for many, many years through his enormous contributions to surgical education, to academic surgery, and his leadership within the American College of Surgeons. He has been a president of many prestigious, preeminent surgical societies and organizations, including our College of Surgeons, the American Surgical Association, to name a few. He was awarded the Distinguished Educator Award of the Association for Surgical Education, which, by the way, is a Lifetime Achievement Award several years ago. And just recently, a couple of years ago, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award of the American College of Surgeons. Now, the American College of Surgeons does not give these awards annually. In fact, in the 112-year history of the college, there have only been 3 recipients of the Lifetime Achievement Award. So this is a wonderful honor. I also want to mention that 2 years ago, I had a real joy and pleasure of being at the Eastern Virginia Medical School, where Dr. Britt was honored by the institution. There were many icons at that event, and Dr. Britt was honored through unveiling of his life-size statue outside their main administration building and the naming of a whole square in that area after Dr. Britt. So it was a real pleasure and a privilege for me to be there. And just last year at the Boston Clinical Congress, Dr. Britt was recognized as an icon in surgery. And again, that session was very well attended, and a lot of people spoke from the heart and mentioned how Dr. Britt had influenced their careers as an absolute spectacular mentor. So I want to now hand the session over to Dr. Shabahang. Before I do that, I would like to thank our wonderful core staff of the Academy, Kate Kimmick and Caroline Forker, who have arranged this evening. And Dr. Shabahang is well known to many of you. He moderates all these virtual grand rounds of the Academy and the fireside chats that occur every month, alternating one type of session with the other. He is a member of the Academy, a renowned surgeon educator in his own right, the chief surgeon of the WellSpan system in Pennsylvania, and a true gentleman and scholar. So with that, Mo, I will hand over the floor to you. We look forward to a wonderful fireside chat. And thank you so much, Dr. Britt, for taking the time to be with us and for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sachdeva, and thank you, Dr. Britt. We'll maybe just do a couple of housekeeping slides. Please, thank you for all who submitted questions, and for anyone who wants to type a question in the Q&A box, please feel free to do so. We're going to try to incorporate it into the conversation. Next slide. We always like to remind everyone that we are very proud that we have a collection of more than 30 recordings right now, both as far as fireside chats with eminent surgeons that we have on the website of the Academy, and also our virtual grand rounds. So please feel free to watch any of those recordings. They now date back to 2020, and this recording will also be added to that. And finally, the schedule for our next 6 months is on the screen. We're excited about our June 27th grand rounds on resident unionization. This is a hot topic, and we hope that you join us for that. Well, with that said, Dr. Britt, thank you so much for joining. This has been something I've been looking forward to for a while. And Dr. Britt is the Henry Ford Professor of Surgery, Edward J. Brickhouse Chair in Surgery, Vice Dean for Clinical Affairs at the Eastern Virginia Medical School. And obviously, as Dr. Sachhiba mentioned, the past president of the American College of Surgeons. As I was reminding Dr. Britt, I had the pleasure and honor of having dinner with him sometime in 2006, I think it was, when he was a visiting professor at Scott and White Clinic, and I was at that time a young attending. And I remember that evening because I was inspired so much by the conversation and the talk the next day. LD, thank you so much. And as always, just want to start with a little bit about your background. It's always interesting to our viewers to know the background of an accomplished surgeon. Where did it all start? So I'm going to hand it over to you as far as your background and how everything started.
Well, Dr. Chauhan, let me first start by thanking you and acknowledging you and Dr. Sachhiba and Dr. Blair. And I'm honored and humbled by this invitation. I want people to know that this is a fireside chat. I'm in my library here. There's no fireplace because it's already 80 degrees in the South. I'm comfortable. I don't have cufflinks. I rolled up my sleeves. I'm not drinking in the beverage. I'm drinking tap water. So I want us to relax and have a good chat. Having said that, I'm a proud native of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I'm a proud native of the South. But I was brought up and raised in the Jim Crow segregated South. Now, I don't want people to think that I'm portraying myself in my childhood days and young student days, that I was in the crushing jaws of violent oppression. But I don't want to depict that I was enjoying hot corn cakes and honey on an oak tree. I was in the vortex of discrimination during my entire childhood as a student. I didn't know integration until I went to the University of Virginia. So people often say you've been successful. I said, look, let's stop on being successful, because success, in my opinion, is often the fulfillment of an appetite for fame and recognition, and I don't have an appetite for that. I'd rather for people to say, you know, LD, you have been of value. I want to be of value and significance. And I tell my colleagues in the audience that I also want to recognize all the people who are not looking at the NBA, not looking at the news show. All my colleagues and friends out there, I want to say hello to you. But before you embark on that journey to be of significance and of value, I feel, for me, there were 5 requirements. And I'm going to be very measured with that. You have to be sincere, that's integrity. You have to be smart. You don't have to be brilliant, but you have to be smart. You have to be spiritual, whatever spiritual background, but you have to have a spiritual sort of base. You have to be safe. There's a lot of things out there that can draw you and distract you. And you have to have, number 5, some sustainability. I'm talking about work ethic. You never have sustainability if you don't have work ethic, and moral ethic. We'll talk about more later for those who want to go on CNN. But those are the things you need before you embark on that journey to be of significance and of value, not necessarily successful. So I'm proud of that. My journey continues. But at the end of the day, I wanted to answer your question that way.
I appreciate that. And may I just elaborate?
And then I want to get into some things I'm concerned about, but I'll let you talk.
No, absolutely. I want to go there. And I want to just ask you, the concept of value and significance. I really am intrigued by, we all use the word success so freely. And you talked about value and significance. At what stage of your career did you realize that those are some of the main tenets of what you were trying to accomplish? Did you know
I
that
saw
as a
so many.
20-year-old young man, or was
No,
that
no, I knew
something?
that. I knew that when I was young because I saw all the inequalities, and I
Mhm.
didn't see people doing much for that. You remember that we were separated by the railroad track. For those who know LD Britt, my first slide in any talk that I give anywhere in the world is the railroad tracks, because the railroad tracks that divided the city from the obviously the disadvantaged to the more advantaged. And so at the end of the day, I knew about the inequality. I knew about inequalities in healthcare. That's why I wanted to be a physician. When my mother went to a doctor and my father went to a doctor, my aunt, we would have to pack a lunch and a dinner because it took hours. There were only 3 doctors of minority backgrounds serving a whole community. So I knew about inequality. So I knew I wanted to do something of significance. I didn't want to be a athlete, although I was a football player, captain, and all that. I didn't want to be a movie star. I left that to Sidney Poitier. I wanted to be a valiant. I wanted to be a healthcare provider, and I knew early. I knew early that I wanted to be a surgeon because I had a chance to interface with Dr. O.W. Hoffler, who was the last resident of Charles Drew. I'm sure Dr. Cornwell is online. He knows that's true. And his father delivered me, and I had a football injury. And his father said, "I want my son to see you." I didn't know. His son came in. He was tall. He was confident, handsome, and a surgeon trained at Howard. And I remember turning to my mother and said, "I want to be like him." And I forged a good relationship with him. And he was a role model. He was my first role model outside of my parents. So I knew early that I wanted to be of value. And when I will say this, let me say this: when I negotiated with EVMS, remember I only had one job. I only had one job in my life. In 1986, when I finished my fellowship, I drove back home, and I negotiated with the medical school then that people couldn't even spell EVMS. I said, "Look, I'll come here, and I'll be committed to you forever, but I want you to fund me every Tuesday morning. I want you to fund me to do at least a half a day every Tuesday pro bono care." And I did that for over 25 years, and I even made house calls. This is my minister, past teachers. So I made a commitment early, and I don't apologize for that. I made sacrifice when I felt I wanted to be of value. So when people want to know LD Britt, that's how I started.
And LD, you've had, obviously, as Dr. Sachdeva mentioned, and anyone who sees any part of your CV, a huge amount of accomplishments: president of the American Surgical Association, president of Southeastern Surgical, and so on and so forth. Positions within your organization, positions outside. How do you balance that versus the value, your value, your purpose of having value and significance? Was there ever a time where that feeling that I am something maybe took over that? Was there ever a challenge of how do I balance the two?
Never, because I put it in, I prioritized it. I never tried to be a president, a leader of anything. I wanted to have good patient outcomes, and I wanted to be essentially a surgeon who was a public servant. So those are my things I wanted. I wanted to have good outcomes. My greatest award, and my greatest is not the statue, not the portraits and all the certificates that you see in this library. It's the residents who have finished. And then they're accomplished surgeons out in the audience now. I know Dr. Narayan and others out there. That's my greatest joy, seeing people who I have trained, educated, mentored, and all of that. I can't have a better award than that outside of having a daughter who's a superstar at Harvard College.
And we were talking about that, and I know you're very proud. One of the questions that
Right.
was asked by one of our participants, and obviously a question that everyone's always interested, is who were some of the people that were of significance in your journey, and why were they of significance?
Okay, as I said, first and foremost, I was my mother. My mother was a school teacher. She was a school teacher, Dr. Shabahan, in the segregated school system for 49 years. She taught the grade that I skipped, which was the 3rd grade. My father was a role model because had a work ethic. He was a rigger in the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And then as I went on, Dr. O.W. Hoffler. And then as I became more established, Dr. Scott Jones, who at that time was chair at the University of Virginia, he embraced me, although I was in a competitive institution. And then obviously Dr. David Hort, who I met on the journey in trauma and all of that, he was a mentor. Dr. J. David Richardson, God rest his soul, Dr. Kirby Bland, Dr. Ron Mayer, I can go through the list, Dr. Tad Copeland, who recently deceased, and Dr. Healy. So I have a list. There are a lot of fingerprints on me that helped me, but they believed in me. And I never played the victim. I didn't care about that. I didn't want them to be concerned that I came from a disadvantaged background. I just wanted them to accept me for my excellence of performance. And I'll emphasize that in a minute, later on.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can we jump in there? I mean, we talked a little bit in our prep session about, and I would just encourage anyone with any questions, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to all of them. We talked about DEI and I know in our prep session we talked about that, so I'm just going to jump right there. And you had some thoughts about the emphasis of DEI and the effect that it's had on maybe the backlash that we're seeing. And I just wanted to probe you about that.
Not a problem. And I'm going to be very measured about this. You know, I was brought up with needs for diversity and equity and inclusion. So I'm not dismissing it. But at the end of the day, it has become a dog whistle that invokes aggressive opposition. I think we need to consider not necessarily DEI, we need to consider that the weapon that you need is not necessarily DEI initiative, because they're all being dismantled now in Florida, in Georgia, maybe in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I want us to emphasize excellence of performance. That was my greatest weapon. I didn't have my greatest weapon throughout my whole career. It wasn't an MK18. It was excellence of performance, because I knew with that I could obviously address suppression. With excellent performance, I could address opposition, racism, elitism, sexism. I had a weapon, and it was a very effective weapon. So I tell my young mentees, that's what I want you to do. Yes, these initiatives are fine, but at the end of the day, you're going to be judged based on your merit. And that's why I have an issue with that. There's too much emphasis on DEI and not enough, in my opinion, on excellence of performance. I'm not dismissing it, but at the end of the day, let's put that out there. Excellence of performance. And right now, people are saying that, some of the opposition, they're saying DEI means didn't earn it. Well, I don't want to have anyone to say that about me. I earned everything that I've gotten, but I did it through the portal of excellence. So I want my audience to hear that. I'm not dismissing DEI, but we need to emphasize excellence, because DEI, there are casualties throughout the country now. They are dismantling DEI very strategically. They first dismantled affirmative action, then they're going to dismantle DEI. So let's focus. Let's pivot here. Let's pivot on what is really effective, and that's excellence.
This question, and this question is not meant to
I hope
be,
that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I may probe this a little bit more, and this question is not meant in any controversial way, but for those who want to be inclusive and allies, they may say, yes, excellence, but if you are not exposed to the opportunities and so on, that you are at a disadvantage to achieve that excellence, how do we balance this emphasis on inclusion and diversity and equity versus the emphasis on excellence? They're not antagonistic, but is there a balancing act that's necessary in your
I can tell you the balancing act. You prepare yourself from day one. When you're given an assignment, you do it completely. Because at some point, Dr. Shabahan, the curtain's going to go up on you. And what I don't want to see, the curtain going up and they see an emperor on the stage with no clothes on. So everyone's going to have opportunity. That's spot, and particularly in our arena, in the discipline of medicine, particularly, sir, at some point, someone is going to look I don't want them to see you on stage with no clothes on. So do your work. For example, my first commitment was to my region. You know, I took care of patients. I developed a track record as far as outcomes. I was vigilant with obviously the chapter. So I started from scratch. And then I just let the body of my work speak for me. I didn't have to say anything. As I said, I didn't politic for any presidential candidacy, or being chief, or chair of the RRC, or the author of acute care surgery. I didn't politic for that.
And when you were president of the Society of Black Academic Surgeons, what was the tenet in the philosophy with which you led that organization?
The philosophy that I had and the organization, we wanted young people to know that they can obviously be successful by being excellent. Mm-hmm. Academic. Now, remember, there's a National Medical Association surgical section, which is a very good section, but we needed something that would emphasize academic excellence, and that was SBAS, Society of Black Academic Surgeons. And I was the executive director that stepped down from that, and we've had some good initiatives. But, you know, at the end of the day, people need mentorship. Right now, what people say, what do you do now? Well, I don't sit back and eat hot cakes and honey. Right now, what I do, I spend time mentoring and networking, and sometimes being an enforcer if I think people are being mistreated. So that's what I do now. So SBAS is a vehicle for academic excellence. That's first. It's a vehicle for mentoring and networking. I think it's a best practice. Of course, I'm biased, but I think it's a best practice. You look at the derivatives of SBAS. I can go down the list. Tricia Turner, Paris Butler. I mean, I could go down the list and take up the whole hour. That's a huge success.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to make sure I mention this comment from Dr. Kent. Don't forget this is to you, that don't forget to describe about your wonderful service to the University of Virginia Health System Board Chair. Your contributions to VA have been extraordinary. You've had an impact nationally and internationally, but don't forget about your local impact in your home of Virginia.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Craig Kent, who's the EVP, the Executive Vice President of the Health System at the University of Virginia. That's the cornerstone of the University of Virginia, in my opinion. Now, I'm biased because I chaired the board, but Craig Kent has led the way. Melinda Kibbe led the way, and it's 60% of UVA's budget is the health system. Mm-hmm. Most of their revenue comes from the health system. So the health system is important. But we need to do a better job across the country.
And I want to
because we need to do it with the major challenge. There are a couple of challenges facing this country. Obviously, global warming, pandemics, and all that. But our greatest challenge that we can address is healthcare disparities. See, a lot of people are tolerant. We're tolerant of inequality in wealth. So most of you are very wealthy, and people are tolerant of that, even though they may not have the money you have. People are tolerant of material possession. You probably own a Jaguar, and I have a nice home. You see a good library. People are tolerant of people being recognized and other people not being recognized. But we cannot allow ourselves to be tolerant of people who don't have clean water. I have clean water. We can't be tolerant of people not having food, not having shelter, not having security and safety, not having a foundational education. Forget about going to Harvard. I'm talking about a foundational education. And in our country now, the wealthiest country of all time, even if you compare us to the Roman Empire, we have disparities and problems with healthcare and wellness. In my state, we have the highest infant mortality for Blacks. And I said this nationally, 42,000 to 50,000 people die every year because they don't have insurance. Now, those are the things we cannot tolerate. Forget about all this drama going on in Washington, D.C. and on CNN. We have to meet this challenge because it's getting worse. The healthcare disparity is not getting better, it's getting worse.
Now, Dee, for those who are, and I definitely want to make sure I get to these questions, but for those who are watching this and say, LD, we completely agree with you, but I don't know what to do. What would your advice be to a surgeon, mid-career, young career, late career?
You start first by going in the community. At the end of the day, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be of value unless you extend yourself beyond the medical school walls, beyond the hospital walls, beyond the health system walls. You got to be in the community. Remember what I told you when I got back? The first thing I did, I integrated myself in the community, my community. I think you have to do that. You have to have a community presence, and you build from there.
I want to make sure I ask, Dr. Hamill asks, I would argue that the necessity of DEI or something similar involves fighting bias in people based on race, gender, etc. When people are judged on elements other than performance and excellence, it causes all the issues that led to the emphasis on DEI. Can you comment?
I can comment on it. Look, remember now, I had slights against me. I had people who were biased. I had people that wanted to undermine me, but you know how I got through it? I maintained my excellence of performance. As I said before, that's what you can do. You can do that, and no one, it insulates you. There's not a health system I can walk into that they can challenge me. I feel that I can hold my own, even with biases. Remember when I went to University of Virginia, they had the Confederate flag still flying, and Dr. Craig Kitt will let you know that he wasn't there. They were singing Dixie and all that. I knew the environment, and I said, I have to persevere. And I knew I couldn't do that unless I became the best student. And when I finished the University of Virginia, only one person from the University of Virginia got accepted to Harvard Medical School, and that was me. And I went to a segregated high school.
Did you, in this, and this is my question, as you were growing up in the segregation that you've described, was there a point at which you felt more hopeless and cynical?
No. I felt, I believed in this country. I think we're the best when our backs are against the wall. Right now in this country, the back is against the wall. We're at our best. Again, everybody's flawed. And this nation is flawed, but at the end of the day, we have done a lot, but we can do better. We can certainly do better in healthcare. Look at all the technology, all the money we spent. We spent $4.5 trillion on healthcare expenditures. And we can't even compete with our industrialized partners. England, Switzerland, France. That's an embarrassment. Embarrassment. Now, for example, you'll find if you get sick right now, Mo, I'll come and take care of you. But that's not the case across the country.
Absolutely.
As Brent Eastman said, if you throw a dot, you want to be able to hit. If you throw a dot, and let's say you get injured at the place where the dot lands, you want to say, I will still get optimal care. We can't say that in America. There's some places where you are not going to get optimal care. There's some places that are deserts. And that's not, we need to address that. That's the point I'm making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. In a question from Dr. Gibbs, LD, thank you for being an inspiration. My first week of internship, Dr. Economo called me to his office and told me all he cared about was, all I care about is excellence. Do you understand me? Can you share your thoughts on mentoring today's young surgeons?
I think they have expectations. And again, I'm not distancing myself from them. A lot of young people, and not the people in the audience, they want my title. They want your title, Dr. Sacheva title, but they don't want our job. They don't want to make the sacrifice. They come in saying, I need to have this day off. I need to have weekends off. I can't work more. That's not in the Hippocratic Oath. There's nothing in the Hippocratic Oath that says that you can have a weekend in Cancun. There's nothing in the Hippocratic Oath that says you have to make this amount. I started off making, I can tell you what my salary was when I started off in the 80s. I made $60,000, maybe $80,000 a year, and I was happy. So you need to focus on your purpose. Your purpose is not to be a millionaire. Medicine got in trouble, in my opinion, and I'll stop preaching, when they took the profit-driven mode. That's not, medicine wasn't meant to make a profit. You have to be obviously financially and fiscally sound, but now it's profit-driven. That's the mistake we made. So I would advise my young people, if they come to me, let's do this the right way.
And the right way, just to rephrase, was have a purpose. Know your purpose. Is that a fair
Absolutely.
recap of that? Another
Not many
question.
people want to do our discipline because they don't want to make it. They don't. A lot of people don't want to do our discipline. They want to be venture capitalists, which is fine. We have a very unique profession, and we need to be obviously true to that profession. We take an oath. So that's what I remind them of. And I said, look, when they get depressed, you know what I tell my mentees if they tell me that? I said, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I know you don't know which way to go and you're depressed and all that. I want you to fall in love again with taking care of patients. Let's fall in love again with taking care of patients. So I said, go and take care of patients. Be happy to take care of patients. Because obviously you have a privilege and the patient wants you to take care of them. So let's fall in love with patient care. That's how I redirect some of my mentees.
Yeah, a question in the chat is, do you have any regrets about anything during your amazing career?
I think I sacrificed a lot, but I had no faith in that. I thought these are the things I needed to do. Could I have managed my workload better? I could have had better workload management, as they say in sports, load management. But I sacrificed a lot. I mean, again, I could have started a family earlier. I have one child and all that. I got married the day before my 50th birthday. So I was 49, and the next day I was 50 and married. So I put a lot of things off. Do I regret that? I can't, but would I change that? It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
Excellent.
I don't regret my choice of going to Virginia and staying. A lot of my colleagues, not you, not that assassin, said, oh, you can't go back to Norfolk. The people don't know EVMS. You're not going to be quote unquote successful. I said, no, it's not about that. I said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to grow with this young medical school. And that's what I did. I never left there. That was my base. But with my base, when I became president of the college, American Surgical, I never left EVMS. So you don't have to go to Stanford. You don't have to have a platform like Yale or Mass General, which is fine. You be the platform and do the work.
That's one to remember.
That's
You
my
be the platform.
that's my comments to my colleagues in the audience.
Very inspirational. I don't want to. I want to make sure that we don't shortchange your thoughts about American surgery, surgical education. Obviously, this is a program of the Academy. You've done a lot for education locally and also nationally and internationally. What do you see? And obviously, the publication of the Blue Ribbon Committee that you've been a major part of is coming out. What do you see as the challenges and opportunities in surgical education?
I'm so glad you asked me that, Dr. Shabahan. I could kiss you. We have a challenge. We have, again, I'm a past chair of the RRC. Dr. Nasker is a good friend. I understand the ACGME, but we are now being forced to turn out an inferior product, not all the programs, because of the 8-hour work week. And then they talk about a 6-hour work week. We can't afford to do that. At some point, we need to assess, well, what was the impact of the 8-hour work week? No one has done that. They haven't validated that improved outcome, extended patient survivability, none of that. And then they're talking about going to a 6-hour work week. We don't have the data to support that. So my opinion, again, I'm pushing this, and maybe I'm by myself, I think we need to look at a new model. We need to pivot. Maybe we need to do what the Royal Colleges are doing. All 4 Royal Colleges in the United Kingdom, England, Ireland, Edinburgh, and Glasgow, they do their own accreditation. Maybe the college needs to do accreditation. Because right now, I know everyone said, well, my residents are all outstanding. We're turning out across the country some inferior products. They're frightened. They're scared to death. They do fellowships because they don't feel comfortable. We can do a better job. We need to take charge of accreditation. So I'm glad you asked me that. And I know I'm going to get some pushback. I know I'm going to get some people angry and all of that.
And just because this is a concept I don't want it to be lost on anyone. I know we have distinguished participants, but the accreditation, obviously, in this country is separate from the American College of Surgeons and separate from the American Board of Surgery. So what I'm hearing you say is that the way we're doing it, it's not that it's just the way we teach should change, but the way we accredit the programs should change. I wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly, and also the why of that. How would
Well, the
that?
why of that is this, okay, if you don't train a good product, you know what's going to be the adverse impact is patient care. So at the end of the day, we want to train a great surgeon, a great physician, but we can't do that if we're handcuffed with all these limitations. I'm saying allow the college to design and go through the blue ribbon panel and all the things that Dr. Chad Stephen and others have done, and Chris Ellison and Steve Stain, so that we can put together a paradigm on how to train young surgeons to be obviously accomplished surgeons with good outcomes. You asked me what I feel a challenge. That's our challenge.
It's a challenge.
And I'm throwing the gauntlet. I'm saying we need to do this. We can't depend on the ACGM in doing that.
So the House of Surgery should be dealing with it.
And I'm not speaking for the college. This is LD Britt saying it. The House of Surgery is led by the American College of Surgeons. And a lot of rooms, we the foundation, but there's an American Board of Surgery room, there's an otolaryngology head neck room. So in a lot of rooms, it's a mansion, but we're the House of Surgery. So the House of Surgery needs to take charge. And I've said this now, so I don't know what the date is, but it's towards the end of the month. So I want to go on record that I've said that this is the move we need to make, because history will frown on us if we don't do this. And again, this is LD Britt talking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One question, just as far as challenges to education, obviously we're in a healthcare system that is, in most places, dealing with a narrow margin, and that causes a lot of angst. And the philosophy, for the most part, in many organizations, is, well, if we incentivize the physicians to make more RVUs and produce more, we can pay them more. Do you think the effect of that is on education? And do you worry about that compensation model that's turned so much towards a whatever we call it? It's a compensation for how much you deliver in RVUs.
I know I'm going to make more enemies, but let me say this. Let me be very measured. In my opinion, RVUs are enemies to academics. You have people with RVUs, they're on the treadmill that's trying to work and work. There's no emphasis on academics, expanding the discovery. So I'm not a fan, I'm not a proponent. We don't use it in our department. I'm not big on RVUs because it drives someone to go against maybe educating themselves, continuing education, better patient outcomes. So we need to leave this RVU thing. Because if we do, I think it will be an enemy to the growth and advancement of our discipline. And that's another thing that I want people to hear. I'm not speaking for the college, but you asked me. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, our system needs to be more efficient. We need somebody like a Steve Jobs, where we're more efficient. Before Steve Jobs, we didn't have this. We didn't have these devices. We need a Steve Jobs type person to modernize and make the healthcare system more efficient. It's not efficient. For example, there are 400,000 deaths per year based on mistakes that we make, and what's supposed to be arguably the best healthcare system in the world. Let me say it again. In 1999, it was 99,000. I think 92 earlier, the IOM report, the National Academy report. Now it's up to 450,000 deaths per year based on mistakes that we make. Now, we need a better system. I think we need an overhaul.
So
and it's not going to be me. It's not going to be you. Yeah, we need somebody young, somebody listening tonight to just say, let's look at a different system. Let's make this system more efficient. For example, at my hospital, now they know this. I just told them this last week. I could look at the Godfather Part 1 movie between cases. The turnover time is that long. I could sit there and have a bagel and look at a Godfather movie Part 1 and my next case will start. That's not efficient. And I love my anesthesia colleagues. They know I love them. But if an anesthesiologist walks up to me smiling, you know what I figured out, Mo? When they walk up to me smiling, that tells me they have figured out a way how to cancel my case. That's not being efficient.
I'm sure a lot of surgeons on this call must probably be finding that.
Now you all invited me. You all invited me to be the Fireside chat speaker. I'm gonna be unplugged tonight. I want to let people know what I'm thinking.
When we were talking a couple of days ago, we said it's going to be unplugged, and I've been asking, and I really appreciate you answering. And you know, it's interesting. I'm looking at one of the comments in bold letters. We badly need more surgeons like you to be an example, an advocate, exemplary caregiver, and a great teacher. Do you feel that we lack the courage to make the changes that you're speaking of?
I'm glad you talked about courage, but let me just say this. I don't usually quote John Wayne. I'm not a big fan of John Wayne. John Wayne said, courage is being scared to death, but still saddling up. And on my desk, if you came to my office, you'll see a sculpture of a man taking a step, and the stairwell is right in front of him. So I want to tell you, like Martin Luther King said, faith is taking that first step and not knowing and not seeing the entire stairwell. That's what we need to do. We need to take that first step. We need to have courage. We need to saddle up.
That's beautifully said. I want to change a little bit about advice about leadership in academic surgery. Academic surgery, and obviously for those of us who are teachers, but not necessarily in academic surgery, how do you see leadership in surgery? With focus on academic surgery, what's your advice to leaders? You've been a leader in surgery for many years. For those who are espousing to be leaders, or who are mid-career leaders or late career leaders?
What advance? So there's some advances we have without academics. I think minimally invasive was done without academics. That was done in the community. But we're not going to advance our discipline without academics. That's the engine. We need to protect that. And you're not protecting that if you are so insistent and mesmerized by RVUs. So we need to protect what works for us as far, because academic, you're talking about discovery and advancing. You're not going to do that without having a strong academic commitment. And that's what I think is being challenged now. And you talk about the private sector, but look at the private sector. Right now, a lot of people are not, the private practice has died. You know who killed the private practice across the country? The electronic health record. The average private group couldn't afford electronic health record. Epic, millions of dollars. So now you see either surgeons, I'll speak about surgeons, either in academics, or they're hired by a health system, and you have very few out in the private sector. So we're beginning to blend into one monolithic group, but I still think we need to emphasize academics.
LD, how do you define academics?
I can tell you how to define it. Academics are doing something that the derivative is you're advancing the discipline, you're advancing outcomes, you're advancing discovery. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you kill rats or you do health advocacy, but it has to advance our profession and the discipline, and the beneficiary has to always be better patient care. That's, in my opinion, research. I'm not talking about Einstein research. I'm not talking about MIT research, but our research should be focused on that. If there's no chance of this change in management and making things better, clinical outcomes, don't do it. You just better go and get some chicken and sit under that tree I talked about where you have hot cakes and honey. It has to make a difference.
That's such a beautiful definition, because I really want to just emphasize that's such a beautiful definition, because we talk about academics in some ways. You can see the difference between academic organizations and non-academic organizations in this narrow margin world has diminished to some extent. So I really just wanted to ask that, and I thank you for that definition. because it just is such a meaningful definition. Several questions.
I have no time limit. I can talk until midnight, so I have no time limit, and I'm totally unplugged. So if anybody want to ask me any questions, I'm going to be very transparent.
I want to say, actually, there was a comment that they said we love the unplugged LD. So I think that's being appreciated by our participants. A lot of questions are asked, both in our questions from our participants and questions tonight about time management. You've done so much, from clinical work to research, funded research, teaching, administration. How do you balance it? Any advice you have for your participants?
Let me tell you, I learned this from the elderly people. I had an elderly grandmother. She had a routine. She had a routine when she woke up. You need to be in a routine. That's how you manage time. I wake up and I work. I read the Bible, do some reading. I work out. So I have a system that keeps me efficient. If you don't have a routine, there's not going to be sustainability. I can tell you that now. Get yourself a routine and stick to it.
And any time that you feel overwhelmed, anything that you do at those times, any advice you have for that?
I think about the people who, again, I've had complications too. I think about the people who I have had the privilege to take care of, and not necessarily save their lives, but to make them have a better wellness, better health status. That's what I think about. If I get down, that's what I think about. Because it's a privilege for me. It's a privilege for me to be a physician. In fact, I'll tell you, if I don't tell my boss and don't tell my president and my dean, I would do this for free. I would do this if they didn't pay me a dime. Now I have to do something, maybe write books or be on TV or something, but I would do this for free.
It's a silly question, but you would do this career again, I take it, any day.
Say that again now?
I said, it's a silly question, but you would do this all again if you had to do it all again, I take it.
Absolutely. That's what I would do. And I would still go to the same back home. I was committed to come back home, back to Hampton Roads. Back, for those who don't know Hampton Roads, that's Norfolk, Portsmouth, and all that. I was committed to go back and contribute back to my community who took care of me. Let me tell you something. I was in the segregated school system, but my best teachers weren't at UVA and Harvard. My best teachers were in those high schools because they were committed. They knew that we didn't have a safety net, and they didn't have the resources. We had used books and all that, but they were my best teachers. And my absolute best teacher was my mother. She did everything at the kitchen table. In fact, if I had to write a play, if I had to put together a play on Broadway, it would be the kitchen table because we did everything there. We did our homework. We talked about finance, all of that.
Incredible. Let me ask, obviously you've been the president of the American College of Surgeons and have been involved with this important organization for years. A question was asked, what do you see as the future of the American College of Surgeons? You mentioned the role in education, but what do you see as other roles that the American College should be playing or will be playing in the future?
We need to, I'm worried, again, you doing your part, Dr. Sachdeeva and others, Dr. Patricia Turner, everybody's on their part. But I'm worried that the American College of Surgeons will not be considered by the fellows as relevant. And if we go down that, if we slide down that hill, that's tough. And again, I'm a member of the AMA. The AMA is an organization that doesn't have the power you have. A lot of the members don't think it's relevant. We can't let that happen to the American College of Surgeons. And we keep it relevant by trying to do things to help people in their practice, to help people obviously take care of patients better. That's what we need to do. We need to obviously be there in Washington and not necessarily lobby, but be there to make sure that our interests are protected. I think our interests need to be protected now with training. I've already talked about that. So we need to do our part. Because then the fellows will say, this is a relevant organization that I need to pay membership dues to, and I need to obviously have some involvement. If we don't do this, they will be on the sideline and we will not be relevant. And see, AMA is not relevant, but they're still doing well because they make money on the CPT codes. They make
So
money.
the
They don't need 1
relevance is
minute.
in the, potentially the relevance is in the wrong
They don't
place.
need 1 minute. They don't even need my dues, but I pay it. They make money. They got a strong revenue stream. That's not going to be the case with the college. So we need to make sure that we stay relevant. I know the leaders are listening to me. But
And
again,
the
I'm being
pillars,
unplugged.
obviously, in the pillars of education, quality, advocacy, which are three of the major pillars, based upon what you've said, sounds like the pillars are in the right place. The engagement may be what needs to be worked on, or be knowing that that could be a threat.
One thing I did very little, but one thing I think I did, I think David Hort gave me credit. The college has done a great job with quality and safety. But I made my theme when I was president. I made the now iconic statement that there is no quality without access, and the college pivoted. Thank to Dr. Hort and others, we put an emphasis now on access. Then we have all these things. So at the end of the day, we need to stay relevant. And as I said before, if you don't have access, you're not gonna get quality. And if you don't, again, this is a whole nother talk for me. I'm concerned about safety. We don't have a safe healthcare environment. We every week, I think I got this from the Joint Commission. I hope Dr. Carlos Pellegrini can confirm this. We leave an unintended foreign object in a cavity. We operate on the wrong site, wrong patient. We can't afford that. That's not. We need a better system than that.
And how do you think the college, this is kind of a maybe too broad of a question, but where do you think the college, aside from what is happening, could be instrumental? And where do you think we as individual surgeons and leaders could be instrumental?
I think we need to be on a mission. If it doesn't, okay, our end block thing is we need to improve patient care. We need to make things more safe. We also need to understand our scope. We don't have unlimited resources. As much as I'm global, but we can't do everything for everybody across the world. We need to concentrate on again, I'm not being a isolationist, but I think we need to understand our scope and understand our resources because it's not unlimited.
One question that's in the questions, and I wanted to make sure you've talked about people who've mentored you and been instrumental in your career. What would your advice to educators and surgeon leaders and surgeons be as far as mentoring others and mentorship?
They need to go beyond their institution. Mentor people who are not at your institution. I mentor people that I barely met. We need to do that. That's right now. People are concentrating on mentoring people at their institution, at their medical school. Go beyond that, because a lot of people need that mentoring. They need that sort of role modeling, that networking. I think one of the things I do for free. I don't do it for any advertisement. I try to mentor people. Not that I get everything right. I'm not always right. Mm-hmm. But the thing, sometimes people need a helping hand. They need guidance. They need some sort of strategy, some sort of paradigm. That's what I try to do.
Excellent. Aldi, as we come to the end of this hour, and we have an amazing number of participants, and I apologize if I have not been able to weave all the questions in. You've given a lot of advice to our participants, and that's very appreciated. What any other thoughts that you want to leave with us tonight, as surgeons, as physicians, as healers? Any final thoughts you want to leave with us? I
can tell you my final parting words. I want everybody, not today, because I know the weekend is coming up and everyone's looking at the playoffs and all of that, and the Stanley Cup. Sometime within before next month, before June, I want you to reread the Hippocratic Oath. Read the Hippocratic Oath. That's what I want you to do. I don't want you to read the Constitution of the United States. Read the Hippocratic Oath. That's our guideline. And be true to that. So that's my advice to them. And if people want to reach me offline, they know how to get a hold of me.
That's inspirational. In maybe I want to ask one other question. You have shown courage always, not just tonight, in being able to express your thoughts in a world that sometimes, people water down the thoughts because we are so worried about maybe our views not being liked. What's your advice about that courage? What has made you be courageous about that? And what would you say to those who say, well, you're LD Britt, you can be courageous, but I am,
No,
Joe Smith, I can't be.
Yeah, I was courageous before people could even say LD, could spell LD. At the end of the day, I don't have an agenda. I wasn't trying to go somewhere else. I wasn't trying to be rich. I wasn't trying to be president of any organization. I try to do things. I'm not always perfect. What's the right thing to do? That's what I did. I had no agenda. And I didn't care about, obviously, someone attacking me and all that. I felt like I would insulate myself with excellence. At the end of the day, I was in the community, and the community became my bodyguards. So I felt free to do what I felt was the right thing to do. I'm not always diplomatic, but sometimes you can be too diplomatic. And at the end of the day, sometimes you have to make a stand. As again, my last quote from Martin Luther King. If your life begins to end the very moment you walk away from things that matter. I don't want you to walk away from things that matter. Remember that. Because your life begins to end the very day you start walking away from things that matter, your life is beginning to tick away. So that's what I want them to take away.
That is such a beautiful quote. You mentioned it the other day, and I was hoping that would come up in the conversation. And that really is a beautiful quote. Which I think is an inspiration to all of us, because we've talked about courage a bunch, and I appreciate you bringing that up again. I know Dr. Sachdeva, I just want to say, Dr. Britt, thank you so much. This has been an absolute honor. I see from all the engagement that our participants have been enjoying it, and there's been a lot to take from this. Dr. Sachdeva, I'll pass it back on to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Britt. It's been really inspirational hearing you again. We've all been inspired. You have shown your passion, as you always do, in terms of what is right and what we need to stand for. And I especially enjoyed hearing again from you. I've heard it so many times before, the importance of values being critical to one's success, and the importance of excellence being the antidote to all the problems and challenges that we encounter every day. I think those are very powerful messages. You emphasize the importance of establishing a routine, as all of us as professionals need to do. And you have also emphasized something that I heard from you in the Regents Room several years ago, that there can be no quality when there are disparities and there is a problem with access to healthcare. And I think that is such a powerful message for everyone to take to heart and to do things to address. And I also want to mention something to the young people who have joined us this evening, or wherever you are in the world. I know it's an international audience, so it may be late at night somewhere else, that your passion and your conviction absolutely show, and they are the ingredients of a true leader: being authentic, having integrity, and regardless of the odds, standing for what is right. So thank you so much, LD, for what you do for us all the time, our academy, your leadership in the college, your leadership in academic surgery. And you've emphasized the role of mentors. Clearly, you have been a mentor of mentors. So thank you so much for this lovely evening. We've enjoyed having you as our Fireside Chat speaker. Thank you, Dr. Shabahang, for once again doing a superb job as moderator. And thank you all who are with us this evening. for joining us. I know there are a lot of competing priorities in the evening and in other parts of the day and night. So thank you so much for being with us. Have a lovely rest of the evening, night, or even morning in certain parts of the world. And we really appreciate everyone being here with us. And thanks again to the staff for arranging it. So have a—
And thank you, Dr. Stephen, and thank you, Dr. Schoppenheim. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Britt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great night.